your reserve mix includes private credit alongside treasuries, alongside money market instruments. For just the everyday listener who's listening to this podcast, how do you protect people's assets? How do you manage volatility? Sort of what's the ethos of building this in times when crypto is seen as being a little rocky sometimes?
Yeah, so ultimately it comes down to old school portfolio construction. So what we need to make sure is that we have a nice deep chart, very liquid, very deep, very high quality assets. These are your sort of T-bills, money market funds, tokenized T-bills kind of products. In addition, we also have some sort of investment grade AAA CLO ETFs in the mix. This is the highest part of the securitization structure, also with very deep markets. And what you have to think about on that component is, what can kind of go wrong? Let's say you've got some short duration price risk on some of those CLO ETFs. Can you get a borrow facility to be able to manage redemptions on just that component, to be able to cover you for the time period in which you're worried about that price side? So this is kind of the normal sort of portfolio construction thinking that you do as a traditional manager. And then on top of that, of course, we have that slightly less liquid private credit part. And the important thing is about sizing that. So you need to make sure it's the right size for the portfolio and for the redemption risk. You also want to make sure that in the cases where that's being done through direct lending to fintechs with direct credit agreements, you want to be making sure that that amortizes in order to be able to make sure you're getting the principal back, in order to be able to, once again, manage the overall liquidity of the portfolio. So anyway, it's maybe a long-winded way of saying things, but ultimately prudence, thinking about portfolio construction in terms of who your users are, making sure that there's sufficient liquidity, and then of course thinking about what facilities can you engage as on the structure itself in order to be able to increase liquidity, not for leverage purposes, but to be able to, of course, manage redemption risks in periods of peak stress. Maybe one thing I'd add onto all of that is that, it's one thing me saying that, it's another thing for the market to believe it. The important part is transparency, not just here's a dashboard we built, though we have built a dashboard which shows you what the portfolio does. But it's going to be more than that. Who's the fund administrator, who are your auditors, at what frequency are you posting this information? How are those assets being valued? I think it's about trying to make sure that the most sophisticated person who's interested in the product has access to all the information that they need on it, whilst also making sure that, we're not asking everyone to, read through 500 pages of documentation just to understand the product itself. So we tried to sort of do that complexity to simplicity thing with the way in which we communicate that information in our dashboards. And of course, if anyone wants to see how we do that, they can go to our testnet and have a look themselves.